Thanks, Bennett, and thanks all for coming today. As Bennett said, I'm Lauren Thorbjornsen. I lead strategy and some of our work in West Africa that I'm going to talk about today at the Stellar Development Foundation. The Stellar Development Foundation is a nonprofit that supports the growth and development of the Stellar Network, which is an open source public blockchain network. If you're not familiar with that, we're going to talk a little bit about what that means as we get going. But Mick, I hand it over to you to introduce yourself.
Well, hi everyone, and thanks, Bennett. Thanks, Lauren. It's a pleasure to be here, and I've watched Semafor grow, and it's been an incredible platform, so congratulations to the team there. I'm one of the co-founders at Global Citizen. We're a movement of more than 12 million citizen advocates around the world. We're probably most well known for our pop and policy model, where we use the power of popular culture and the creative arts to really mainstream issues of extreme poverty, but also give people a place where they can take action as well. And since we were started, we've mobilized more than 40 million citizen actions around the world, and more than a quarter, I'm proud to say, have come from citizens across the continent of Africa.
Amazing. Well, I think we're going to root our conversation a lot in the creative economy today and creators. And I want to start by telling a story about someone I met at the start of last year. At SDF, we did a trip where we hit Ghana, Nigeria, and Kenya. And we met someone named Joy, who is a creative director. He's a producer. He's a videographer. He's super talented, has an amazing portfolio, has worked with global brands. And as we were traveling with Joy, kind of what kept coming up in his story was just how hard it is for him to get paid for work that he is exporting globally. So when he's working for these global brands or doing things, kind of the hurdles he has to jump through to get paid and to monetize his work. And that's really a pain point that we started thinking about solving. But you know what, it stuck with me, what Joyce said at the time was, I'm a creator, I'm not a banker. And how can we give people like Joy the tools to have this economic growth with not having to kind of worry about how that money is coming in or even think about it. And that's particularly relevant to the creative economy because that's an industry that's expected to grow globally by 10% by 2030. And the reality is where it is today, Africa's participation is not representative, particularly when you think about the youth population that is enormous and growing. In Ghana, for example, 57% of the population is under 25. And those are folks who want to tell their stories and get them out there. I think a lot of what we're going to talk about here is the platform for creators. And Mick, I know that's a big priority for Global Citizen to really elevate African artists. And I just want to hear from you. How did that become a priority for Global Citizen?
Well, I think it was really building off what you were saying about the potential. And, we know that young people throughout history have always driven the clothes we wear, fashion we consume, food we eat, the music we listen to, right? And it stands to reason when 70% of the continent is under the age of 30 that Africa is going to be at the heart of that. And we've seen it in our own response at Global Citizen. And I think, of course, when you look at the macro picture, to your point around where the potential is, music has been growing a lot. The revenues from music globally, I think 2 years ago, it accounted for 2% of global GDP. In the last year, it accounted for 4% of GDP, and that's rising. And the fastest growing region for the second year in a row, and admittedly it's coming from a low base, but was the continent of Africa, sub-Saharan Africa. So there's huge potential, and I guess one of the areas where Global Citizen felt we could contribute to was the live events industry. Global Citizen, we traditionally used music. You look at the Global Citizen Festival in Ghana with Usher, or the Global Citizen Festival Mandela 100 in Johannesburg in 2018 with the likes of Beyonce, Jay-Z, and many others. We used the creative arts really to advocate as a means to an end, but not an end in itself. And one of the things, the opportunities that people said to us is they said, it would be great if you came back year on, year in, and not just did one city, but multiple cities. Because the thing many artists say is we want to come to Africa, we want to tour there, but it's just not viable to go to one city such as Kigali. We want to do multiple cities year in, year out. And if we can do that, if we can show the live events industry, you're not just helping local creators and artists you're also helping all the businesses ancillary to the live events industry. We launched this campaign, this tour, Move Africa, which we hope will become one of the first major international touring circuits through Africa. We launched it with Kendrick Lamar, PG Lang, just over 12 months ago in Kigali, Rwanda, and more than 1,000 people employed, local businesses using technology to found ticketing businesses as well around this. And so we're excited about the potential that can come, but ultimately the goal is for others to emulate this as well. And of course, technology is a critical part of what we're doing here, and that's why I'm excited that we're in discussions with you at Stellar. And so I'd love to hear more from you, just building on what I was saying about how technology, specifically the blockchain, can really help lead to the creative industry flourishing across the continent and around the world.
Yeah, I think events is a great example of folks coming in and wanting to have a payment mechanism to pay folks on the ground, right, and like build up that local economy, and what an important mechanism that is. But I think maybe what I first want to say is most people don't really need to understand how blockchain works. In the same way that I guess most of you in this room don't really know how your email works. You just trust that it does, and you use it because it provides value to you. But what I do want to say about blockchain is it is a tool that can help do things like move money easier in a way that's faster and more affordable, and secure. And then if you think about sort of the benefits that provides to the end user, is that then you can do use cases like a family that needs to send a remittance, or a business who is expanding into new markets and needs a way to either pay local vendors or even pay some of their supply chain. There's a lot of economic opportunity for those folks to be able to make those payments. And then also, that's sort of the upstream view of the end user, whether that's a business or an individual. But the downstream benefit is also, that's the downstream. The upstream is the developers, right? The builders who are in these local communities who get access to a public platform, a public network. So I want to kind of come back to why that's important about Stellar being a public blockchain. It means any builder in the world who sort of wants to solve a problem can build on this network, and we really strongly believe that local builders are going to be the right ones to solve their local challenges because they live them every day. So how can we empower those folks with the tools to solve their local financial challenges in particular? And so I think, just building on that, I think that's when we've seen some of these really compelling use cases that we're going to talk about, that solve some of these challenges, particularly in areas in West Africa.
Yeah, well, I'm glad you mentioned West Africa because, look, creative economy, and I know we were connected actually through our mutual friend. You might have heard of him, Idris Elba. And Idris Elba, he's passionate himself. He's building film academies, investing in them right across the continent. You can already see the future of the audiovisual industry, the film industry. And we took a page out of his book looking at the music industry, which we think could be, groups like the World Bank, the IFC, these institutions, they're just starting to talk about it. The Africa Export-Import Bank, Afrexim Bank, already has a $2 billion creative industry fund. But we really do think, especially when right now people are focused on the job losses from technology in traditional areas like manufacturing and agriculture that have lifted communities out of extreme poverty, we really do believe that the creative economy could be that driver of job creation, of economic development, poverty alleviation. We're working with Universal Music Group on some exciting economic data that drives the investment case. So we hope institutions will really rally behind us. I know RJ Benga, the former CEO of MasterCard, now president of the World Bank, he mentioned for every dollar invested in tourism and the creative economy, it creates 8 more jobs in manufacturing. And so with that in mind, and I mentioned Idris, and he connected us, and he saw this real cooperation, and I know he's doing some work with you. But I understand you and him have an exciting new product. Particularly, you mentioned West Africa, and I should say, the reason why I was excited about West Africa, because next month, the next iteration of Move Africa, we're adding a new city each year. So we'll be in Kigali. And we're also be in Lagos with John Legend. So anyone who wants to come to that, there's still tickets available. You can buy them online. Each year we're going to add another city. So that's really exciting to be back in West Africa. But yeah, what's your announcement?
Yeah, so we have launched what's called the Akuna Wallet. It is a joint venture with Idris Elba and the Stellar Development Foundation. And the idea behind it is to create a digital wallet that's going to allow these creators to transform their imagination into income. So what you were saying, right, how can we bring money in, and sort of picking up on what I was saying earlier, these creators who want to export their talent but import investment into the country, this is a really great way to do it. So the Akuna wallet is a digital wallet that is blockchain powered, and I'm going to explain really briefly how it works, but before I do that, and I promise I won't be overwhelming in the blockchain details, but the sort of the problem it's solving is one thing we've heard again and again as we've been talking to creators, particularly in Ghana, is that when they are trying to create content and put it on global platforms like YouTube or Spotify, it's really hard to get paid. Whether that is because they have long lag times, right? So the processing time, or they have to patchwork something together where a friend in the UK puts their bank account, and then they're going to try to do it versus another payment platform, and then finally they'll get it into their Ghanaian bank account. It takes a long time, and not to mention they lose a lot to fees. So how can we make that first faster and more efficient and more affordable for them, and they end up with more money in their pocket? So what we created, the Akuna wallet. It is a digital wallet, and what it offers creators is a virtual US bank account. So they have a US routing number and a bank account number that they can put into these platforms, get paid directly from the platforms into their wallet, and they'll have a US dollar-backed stable coin. So it'll be deposited as a stable coin, and when they're ready, they then are integrated already into local payment systems where they can cash out into CDs. So they can either go into mobile money, which is pretty compelling, and then, or they can cash out into their bank account or into physical cash. So we believe it's going to be really transformative for these folks who have already, we have a pilot going right now. It's in Ghana. Why we picked Ghana first, Idris had a personal connection. He's Ghanaian. And also they have a huge, vibrant creative economy in Ghana. It makes up to almost 5% of the GDP there. And there's a really friendly regulatory environment. And when you have this kind of innovation that's so important, they've created a really compelling way to have a sandbox where you can test these things so the central bank can get really comfortable with the technology before it's available to consumers. So we're really excited about that. But picking up on the regulatory, Mick, I just want to toss back to you because I know engaging with regulators as a way to enable your work is really important, and I'm curious sort of how that factors into your work at Global Citizen.
And first of all, just picking up what you're saying, it's not just the creators themselves, right? It's all the other ancillary industries that go with it. Sound, editing, lighting, security. You think through everything that goes in, and it's thousands of people for often one project, live event, potentially exponentially more as well, if we get this right. And I think in some areas, some businesses, small entrepreneurs, they're paying 17% often for transaction fees. And, the UN estimates that should be 3%. That's what the world agreed on 10 years ago as part of the Sustainable Development Goal. So this is why this is so important to unlocking growth, creativity, and ultimately alleviating poverty, which goes to the heart of our mission. Look, from our perspective, I know a big theme this week is artificial intelligence, always is the last few years. And of course, AI can be complementary to the creative process if you have access, right? And we know, for instance, 600 million people across the continent don't have access reliably to electricity. And this is why, efforts to provide them, there's this great movement, Mission 300, which RJ Banga, the African Development Bank, and many others are about in terms of how you scale up renewable energy and others to provide access to electricity to actually connect people to these platforms in a reliable way. And we've seen this in our own work, right? Like when we were in Kigali, we noticed a trend that most people were downloading the app and they were accessing the rewards between 12 to 1 each day, which coincided often with university break, access to Wi-Fi. So that's where we activated. But I think one of the biggest areas when it comes to artificial intelligence is how you get the balance right with intellectual property and copyright exemption, right? You look at, in some markets in South Africa, there's a huge debate around what exemptions data should have in terms of being made available to tech companies. And there's some on some extreme who says everything should be available. everything an artist ever produced, whole record catalogs, and there's others saying there needs to be a balance here so creators actually have their work protected. And over the likes of Universal Music Group, this is fundamental because in many cases they're investing in these young creators. So one of the things we're saying is, yes, the creative industry could offset job losses in other areas as a result of technology, but it could also be one of the industry's most vulnerable unless we have the right policy frameworks. And I think we can get there, but it's going to require that dialogue in order to make sure we strike the balance right when it comes to intellectual property. The good thing is there's many people engaging on this. There's many smart and bright people. There's the Center for Music Ecosystems. My friend Shane Shapiro, who founded that, he wrote a great book. You should check it out. Check out his Substack. And there's lots of engaging and thoughtfulness going on. And of course, we can use these tools to advocate as well. So it's really exciting. Watch this space on Global Citizen. And with that, I'm going to throw it back to you, Lauren. What are you excited about beyond the Acuna wallet, which is really incredible and exciting?
Well, I'm excited about the fact that the Acuna wallet should be generally available in Ghana and later in Q1 or early Q2, so that's a big milestone for us. But I'm also getting the cue that we're over time. So I'm going to say what I'm most excited about is, I think what we've kind of surfaced here is that there's so many opportunities in a lot of ways that a lot of stakeholders can collaborate to create this path for Africa's growth, particularly in the creative economy. And I think come find me and Mick if this is something that interests you and we could work on together, because again, we're looking for partners to grow the impact. And I'm going to hand it back to Bennett so I don't get in trouble on time. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you both
Appreciate
so
it.
much.
Thank
Give
you.
it up for Lauren and Mick.